It's time to enhance the relationship between expertise and impact, between knowledge and application. Welcome to a journey of discovery and empowerment. Welcome to All Physicians Lead, the Forbes Books podcast that highlights the critical leadership role that all practicing physicians take on every day. Here's Dr. Leon Morse.
Welcome back to All Physicians Lead. We're continuing our conversation with Dr. Stephen Jones, President and CEO of the Inova Health System. Earlier, Dr. Jones shared his remarkable journey from small-town farm boy to leading one of Washington, D.C. area's largest nonprofit healthcare providers. Dr. Jones, let's discuss Inova's approach to leadership development.
Yeah, so when I started at Inova a little bit over 6 years ago, we had a very intentional journey that I laid out. And we based that on the Cotter change management model, in which, you develop a vision, you get a burning platform. There's a model that those of you getting into physician leadership at some point will almost surely, hopefully pick up and read. It may be early. It's not the first thing you want to read in your leadership journey, but it's really how an organization really puts in place a way to change in a sustainable, enduring fashion. And so part of that, we needed to have a number of things, most significantly focusing on culture, to have the right folks in place and the right focus on that culture to drive that. We're now launching what I call internally our second curve, our second transformation curve, and leadership development now becomes an even bigger part of that. So we focused on specific things with leadership over the first few years, including leading inclusively in our environment as a critical piece of our success. But at this point, leadership, both physician and otherwise. So it's actually one of our 2025 priorities to add intentional leadership development in. You might say, well, why didn't you do that right from the start? And the answer is because we needed the infrastructure in place to do that. Otherwise, we actually are kind of sending people off in a whole bunch of different directions. So at this point, we're launching that as one of our priorities. The physician part is going to be one of, I think, the most complex, to the point of we didn't come for the business background, but we come from a background that is equally important to the success of the organization.
So a lot of our folks are going to wonder, of all the opportunities that you had to lead at a senior level in healthcare, why Inova? As you look back on that, seems like the right decision for me, and I know a lot of folks think that. How about for you, and how did you make that choice? And for folks who are going into that leadership realm, what advice do you have for them about picking where to do it?
Yeah, I think the setting matters a lot. I was at a great organization, Cleveland Clinic, spent the better part of my career in that organization, and forever grateful for both relationships still there, but also the experiences that I was given to prepare me for that point. We were also very happy in Cleveland. I know sometimes people wonder, well, how can you be happy in Cleveland? Well, it's a place where I raised my kids, where still some of my best friends in the world are. So it's a special place in our heart. But at one point I got a call in which the recruiter told me that there was a role that they thought that my background was particularly related to. And the sitting CEO was going to be soon announcing his retirement, but hadn't been announced yet. So they couldn't tell me, but that they wanted a small slate to present to the board, and they wanted to ask would I be on that slate. And I told them, look, I'm certainly not looking. And in fact, there's only 3 or 4 places in the country I would consider. There are just a number of places where I thought, if it's in Seattle because my kids are there, or if it's in a couple of places, and I'd always loved DC for whatever reason. It just had always been a place that I thought was the greatest city in America. And so I said, barring, and there were a couple others, said, barring it's one of those places, don't even call me back. So she calls me back in a week or two and says, oh, now I can tell you where it is. It's in Northern Virginia. It's like, oh man, now I've got to
now you've put that out there already. So
I've got to go waste a day, talk to these folks. And so I got on the plane and I came and met what you knew that I would come and meet, which was an incredible medical environment of people who are doing great work episodically, not as a team. And one of the things I learned at Cleveland Clinic is the key to succeeding as a team. I know from your military background, you probably, of course, know that by nature. But I saw that we already had incredible medical community, one I would say at the time, second to none anywhere in the country. And by the way, the rest of our workforce, nursing and all the other roles, phenomenal workforce. What we weren't doing as one team, we were a confederation. And so I saw that for the future of healthcare, if you could put those things together successfully, nobody could beat that. And at 6 years in, we put that together successfully. Are we all the way there? Absolutely not. I just told you we're now starting our second curve. So we have a long way to go to perfection, trust me, but we have the pieces in place to let that happen. But that's why it was a great community in a place that I saw a path to success, because I saw you and your colleagues already here doing phenomenal work without doing it all together.
That's awesome. The history of healthcare, not long before we started training, I tell folks that when I'm giving some of these talks that when a doctor walked in the room, the nurses would stand up. I don't know if you had experienced that, or we certainly saw it in the movies, right? Well,
We saw and heard about it. I don't think I've ever been in the room.
I tell that to folks that, we are not going back there. Healthcare is very much less hierarchical, less paternalistic than it was. And we're on a journey, I think, in healthcare. It's going to become even more team-oriented as we go forward. What advice do you give to physicians to say, hey, yes, your positional authority means something. We call them doctor's orders, not doctor's suggestions. And yet you still need to balance that, being able to listen to everyone on the team and get their best advice and opinions while making decisions, sometimes in a very rapid-paced environment. How does all that fit together? There is a hierarchy legally. Credentials make that hierarchical, but we still want to make sure that we are leading inclusively, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think it's probably the most complex thing. And by the way, if you get that one right, your next book will be the bestseller of all time, because it is so complex. So I think there's a couple pieces. One is you are the physician. Never have a doubt about that. Sometimes physician leaders will come to me and they're thinking about getting into, quote, administration. And I find often they don't know what that really means when they ask the question even. But one of the things is, well, I think I could just start being a fill in the blank and don't have to practice anymore. That's about the worst reason to get into physician leadership, is that you don't like practicing medicine. And my standard line is that the only person who can take your white coat away is you or the state medical board, but we're going to count on that not happening. So I encourage physicians, lean into, you are a physician executive. I think it's important to, though, be a physician executive, not an executive who used to be a physician. That's not to be as compelling. To the piece on then, engaging folks, I think you have to have a big dose of humility. And though we were not trained in humility in medical school or residency, of course, quite the contrary, but to be willing to understand what many of us understood even in the ICU as interns. There are nurses who know more about this than you do. They've watched patients deteriorate. They know when something's going to happen, and they probably can't put it in words, but they do. Most physicians have had experiences down that with non-physicians as members of the team. We'll extrapolate that across finance or HR, all the other pieces, and know there's a lot of smart people out there. And the key there, I think, that is you lean into that piece. You've got the physician voice. Know that those other voices, though, are key to success. But that's hard. I think it takes a lot of intentional training. It goes back to the first part of this conversation, intentionally training yourself how to do that.
So you've been very involved with your professional society, and if I recall, editor-in-chief of your journal at one point, maybe still, I apologize.
One more year.
There you go. Very, very high level affiliation. Thank you for that service to our patients across the world, really. One of the things that I like to talk about is that professional societies can have some role in developing physician leaders, but they have a unique relationship with their members and limited contact, if you will, a meeting or two a year, and then some asymmetric engagement. How do professional societies look at leadership development and try to build that within their membership, in your experience?
I think it's pretty heterogeneous to start. One of the things that I frequently say to any of the membership societies that I'm part of, the American Neurological Association, the American Colleges of Surgeons, the American Medical Group Association, I'm the chair of the board this year. The issue for a membership organization is if you don't have membership, you don't have an organization. So meeting the needs of your membership is an existential requirement. And I think that most of them, certainly mine that we've mentioned here, have embraced their potential role in leadership development. The issue is, I think you pointed out, their direct interaction with the members is relatively episodic. And so understanding the members I think is key to that, and recognizing you can't solve everything for every member, but a place where you can uniquely help. So if we take the American College of Surgeons, uniquely help surgeons develop that aspect of their career is a real opportunity for that, or the AUA or any of the other organizations we've mentioned here. But you've got to know your membership. And I think that for any of the physicians listening to this is to be honest about which of those organizations you're in and what their offerings are. If those offerings are beneficial, then lean into them. If they're not, either put pressure on your organization to potentially make those offerings more robust, or reach outside to other avenues that you might learn to develop your own physician leadership.
Thanks. Yeah, that's great. There's a balance. I mean, we're all very busy. And so when I talk to physician groups and say, you're a leader and here are my 100 favorite books on leadership, they just go, whoa, I don't have time to do that or take more courses. I'm already behind on my health stream training and I've got to finish all my charts, and you're going to stuff something else in. But a lot of learning leadership is OJT. It's experiences on the job. The concept of just recognizing that you are a leader and then reflecting on that with the intent to improve is a pretty efficient way to become a better leader, but you have to recognize it first. So if you were to talk to physicians in your organization, your professional societies and otherwise, is there a message that you would tell them, no, you are influencing behavior every day, therefore you are leading, and there are ways to get better at that just through self-reflection is just scratching the surface of your personal leadership development journey?
I think that one's hard because that requires people who may or may not want that message to hear that, which is hard with physicians. I think you would probably agree. I think the target audience is probably that physician who wants to be a leader or thinks they want to be a leader. And I think it's great that you're giving them that direct feedback of, you're going. If you want to be a leader, it's not going to happen by accident. You're going to have to embrace the fact that in that setting, you just named some, that in that room, you are a leader. And if you want to improve it, here's ways to do it. Again, it goes back to the person who says, I'm ready to be a leader now, just put me in, coach. Well, no, you wouldn't say there's some new, incredibly complex neurosurgical intervention that doesn't exist right now, which is hard to envision. But if we do, you wouldn't, as a senior physician, just walk in and go, hey, I'm going to do one of those next Tuesday. You would get yourself ready. So it's no different. You would get yourself ready to actually influence others in the way that you think is a direction that would be to the betterment of everybody, hopefully, absolutely, starting with our patients. For those folks who want that, to push them to say, it's not going to happen by accident. Getting in the room is part of that's not by accident, but being intentional in how you determine how you can be more effective in your leadership. And those who, I think people kind of self-select. Those who really want to put the time and effort in will do so, and those who are pretending won't, and they'll continue to be hopefully great clinicians. And that's, by the way, a great career. Being a formal leader is not something everybody should do. It's a phenomenal career to be a physician and make a difference in people's lives like we do.
Yeah, it's incredibly rewarding, for sure. And one of the ways we can make lives better, if I'm not mistaken, a distinguished chair at the clinic in your name. Tell our audience a little bit about that. How did that come about, and what are the goals and vision for that position?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I in my full-time surgical career at one point had the opportunity to care for a couple of incredible gentlemen, and of course their families. We say in the cancer world, patients don't get cancer, families do. And to get to know the families of both of these gentlemen, Sam Miller, who was one of the great giants in Cleveland, and Leonard Horvitz, who was also one of the great giants in Cleveland, both business icons in their time. Both had served our country during World War II and beyond in heroic ways that you and I have shared before. I think at least with one of those, and I've got stories over a beer at some point to just talk about the courage of people who made that difference from protecting our country in moments like that. And I know, of course, that rings true to you and your background, and you know how much I value and appreciate that. But in both of those, at some point they ask, how can I thank you? How can I help you, do more for more people? And one of the things that physicians often do when people ask how to thank them is to blow it off and say, it's no big deal. And I would encourage you, whether you get into philanthropy or not, please never do that. When someone tells you that thank you for saving their life, you say it's not a big deal, then what you just told them is saving their life is not a big deal. It's a real big deal. It's a thing that their family will never forget. And the philanthropy folks taught me how to, kind of show grace in that and say, it's an honor to be part of saving your life. And I'm glad that we were able to do that. But then in certain people who have means, they're able to fund things. So they funded an endowed chair, which supported a lot of my research in urologic cancer and published many, many things out of the research coming from that. And that they asked that at the time that I left Cleveland Clinic, that it would be named in my name as an endowed chair for the sitting chair of the department. And they're currently searching for that. And I look forward to that person carrying on the tradition of investigating the conditions of our specialty, cancer specifically for me, and improving outcomes, because through that research, the world gets better. And those type individuals that donated, they can't learn how to take a kidney or a bladder out, but they can be part of it by doing what they've done. And giving donors the opportunity to be part of what we do is an honor to them. And by the way, supports what matters to us and our patients.
Yeah, that's a great story, and links back to what we were talking about earlier, that this takes a huge collective effort to be able to do what we do. And you and I know the surgeon in the operating room is spending less time in the lab, but contributing to that bench research, translational research in varying ways, depending on the level of commitment there. So kudos on that. And I'm sure it's going to make a difference going into the future for a long, long, long time. So over the next 5 to 10 years, you look forward a strategic leader, obviously, in our region and nationally. What are some of the big muscle movements in healthcare that you see impacting patients, physicians, healthcare systems, and physician leaders, how to prepare for those changes that you see?
For one thing, I say that I think all healthcare is local. So my answers here and maybe different than if I were in fill in the blank of some other town in America. Here, I think that the real key for us is to continue to focus on excellence as a system. We're now, our second curve is based on us developing a consistency of, quote, Inova care. In our community, we happen to have still a very strong contingent of independent aligned physicians that have very successful, both their practices and their alignment with Inova. In other communities, almost all physicians have become employed because that's the nature of those communities. I think that we will have a pluralistic model here for a long time. But what I want our patients to experience is that regardless of where they are, whether it's in a Inova-owned site or in our partnered practices, that they will know that they're getting a consistency of care, something they know they can count on. They don't have to wonder, if I go to this place versus that place, have I gone to the right place? I want them to be part of Inova, and we take responsibility for assuring that they can get that safe, equitable care regardless of where they are in the system. So that's not the big sexy things that some people focus on. A lot of people focus on, let's get a big merger or let's start a new AI company and all these other things. When you look at people doing that, we don't see that they're actually moving the ball very much from anything measurable. Whereas, we've seen significant growth. We've seen our outcomes here measurably top, quartile to decile across the board, because we know what we're committed to. It's developing incredibly high quality Inova care. And that's the part that we'll be focusing on, at least for the next 5 to 10 years. And of course, we're going to grow. Any thriving organization grows. We're going to grow by, if we partner with those, it's those that it makes sense to partner, not just so that we get bigger.
Yeah, one of my favorite statements is think globally, act locally, right? You fix your own backyard. And obviously, I'm living that at Inova, so I very much appreciate the trend that you've described.
Also why, just with knowing that you and those others providing that care, why I have such confidence in our ability to do so.
It's very kind. And I love working with the colleagues here, and I can see why people just don't leave. We only have a few minutes left. One final takeaway, key message for physician leaders from Dr. Stephen Jones.
But just be thoughtful on whether you really want to be a formal leader or not, because the rewards are untold. I mean, it's just really incredible to have the ability to help other people succeed. By the same token, if we only play into it, then that actually doesn't end up making an impact like we want. And we can do that in our clinical work. You all know how to do that in your clinical work, and never undervalue that. Just decide where you want to spend your day.
Dr. Jones, thanks for your time. Thanks for being on the All Physicians Lead podcast, and thanks for all the work you're doing in Northern Virginia.
Thank you for pushing for physician leadership.
And that's it for another episode of All Physicians Lead. If you like the show, please subscribe so we can notify you about new episodes. In addition, please take a moment to leave us a review so others can benefit from the leadership insights of our terrific guests. See you next time as we continue to explore redefining physician leadership.
This has been All Physicians Lead. We can all be better leaders, and our teammates and patients will be the beneficiaries. Go to allphysicianslead.com to unlock your potential, sharpen your impact, and elevate your journey. All Physicians Lead with Dr. Leon Morse is a production of Forbes Books.